Guys, we are back with the new episode of The Reality of Hollywood, where we talk about all the things business related, creatively, but also having the right mindset, right? We talked about that. And today, with special guest filmmaker Ryan Schnau. Check this out. Yeah, my lovely people, we are back in the building with a new episode of The Reality of Hollywood. And as I mentioned already, I have a very special guest tonight. I'm so glad that he made it because he told me already that he was kind of speechless last night because he watched the new James Bond movie, No Time to Die. But I hope he can talk today. Filmmaker Ryan Schnau.
Hi, Benjamin. Thanks for having me. And yes, I got some rest, so I'm still recovering from it, but I'm good to go.
I remember when I got your message, I was like, okay, is he okay? I'm not sure. Is he fine? Because the movie must have been like crazy good.
Well, for me, it's like Casino Royale was the first feature film that I saw by myself in theaters.
Right.
And my mom and sister saw Happy Feet.
Right.
So it was like kind of like a big experience of like my entertainment watching live.
Wow.
And like the other movies were a huge part of like my education career.
Right.
So for me, it's like 15 years of these Craig movies has been a huge part of my life. So it's kind of like last night was kind of like an end of a chapter of my entertainment watching life.
That was basically the end of his era, right? So
yeah.
that was his last movie,
yeah,
right?
technically, I can't say much, but these 5 movies are basically one story.
Right.
So for me, it's like the end of his era, but also like the end of like kind of like the James Bond experience.
For sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I really liked him as a James Bond. We're definitely going to talk about that a little bit. I haven't watched it yet, so I just want to get your feedback on that.
Totally.
But before we get into that, I just want to get like more understanding about your background. I mean, you also moved to LA. We talked already about that a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
But can you just please explain to the audience a little bit more, what are your background, where you're coming from, and why did you got into film?
Yeah, so one of my first things that I did, actually the first thing I did was I was a YouTube personality when I was 16 years old. So I was a junior in high school.
Nice.
And I talked about like I did like movie reviews, Blu-ray unboxings.
Right.
I did like trailer reactions to a lot of like famous movies like The Avengers or like Guardians of the Galaxy. And it was like I was acting, I was editing, sound mixing, doing like the graphics of the pictures of like the movies or Blu-rays.
Yeah.
And then I was I did 2 years of film school in my high school class.
Right.
So beginning and intermediate. And 2006 was kind of the beginning of when I like was starting to get into movies in a way. I remember this July 4th event, and like there was like this live orchestra, and then they were playing the Raiders of the Lost Ark opening scene with the boulder, and I was so like kind of like amazed by it. And I was kind of starting to buy Blu-rays, like DVDs, and I was going to the movies sometimes, like bike riding from like my dad's home to the theater, and I was just so like engaged in like entertainment culture.
Right.
So for me, it's like I've always had TV, films, and music in my life.
Yeah.
There's also a lot of my projects have music and film together.
Right.
And I think it was just a lot of like experiences with the entertainment and pop culture life that kind of brought me to kind of working full time.
And where are you from originally? Because you're not born and raised in it.
Yeah, so I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area.
Right.
So there's a city called Santa Clara. That was like I was technically born in a hospital, but I was born and raised in San Jose, basically Silicon Valley.
Nice.
So if you don't know the Bay Area well, so like think of like the Facebook headquarters, Twitter, all those like big Apple type of locations.
Right.
Yeah, that's where
That's definitely what we know, for sure.
Yeah.
And so that means for you personally, because we already, or I personally talked to some people already, and everyone always has kind of a moment, kind of a situation in life when we felt like, hey, I definitely want to go into film or entertainment and filmmaking. That's part of me. I definitely know that already right now at a very young age.
Yeah.
So that was the moment for you you just described, right? But did you already know at that point what you really wanted to do in the film industry or entertainment industry? Was it clear already for you?
I don't think it was like a full vision yet of like the job positions I wanted.
Yeah.
But I definitely remember when I took my first year of film school in my high school class, that like I remember like watching The Social Network for the first time, and it was like
great movie.
I've never seen like a movie like so like artsy and poetic. So
Yeah.
I was like studying like a lot of editing.
Yeah.
And I was also editing a lot with my YouTube videos. So
Right.
I definitely did a lot of editing.
Yeah.
And I did like a lot of camera and like directing during that class.
Right.
So for me, I wasn't like full on like I want to be a director or like, you know, like an actor. But in the moment, I definitely did a lot of editing during that time.
Right. And honestly, I definitely wanted to talk about that for a second because we actually met on set a couple of years already,
Yeah.
like a couple of years ago, right? On the A Doctor's Monster. Which honestly, you guys have to check it out. By the way, I think it's a really fun movie to watch. Right?
It's something.
It's definitely something for sure. Very interesting, very experimental.
Yeah.
I feel like, right? And what I always appreciated about you, and I really wanted to talk about that for a second, when you came to LA and you talked to me about that already, is that you always felt like, hey guys, I'm new to this town. I do whatever it takes to get into it, to get into the business, to get into the entertainment industry,
Yeah.
even if that means I'm going to be a production assistant. I'm going to do editing. I'm going to do all these things because I know I want to know about all those things. And
Yeah.
then eventually at some point, I'm becoming my own filmmaker, director, and do my own projects as well. And I really like that attitude because I feel like a lot of people just think, hey, I'm just coming to LA. I have my vision. I'm going to be there tomorrow. You know, so how did you set your mindset to basically always telling yourself, hey, this is just step by step. This is step on the go. I know exactly what I'm doing, and this is my main goal. But I have these certain steps, and I do different positions in order to get there.
Yeah.
How did you set your mind to that?
It's interesting because when I started my film career, I was like doing a lot of directing, editing, videography, a lot of one man bands
Right.
for different like I did like a fitness startup. That was my first job when I graduated college. I did like events, music videos, kind of like short content, and I did a lot of editing for short docs and other stuff. So I did have like a good portfolio before I moved to Los Angeles. But like when you're in LA, you're like a little fish in a big pool. When I was in the Bay Area, the film industry is much smaller. A lot of people know each other. So for me, when I moved to LA, this is kind of like for me, I knew a few people, but a lot of those people, you know, they're not going to give you a job all the time. So with the Doctor's Monster that we did, I remember Renee Garcia, who was the first AD.
That's right.
She got me the job, and so like, and I did some other PA stuff, like to pay the bills sometimes in San Francisco.
Right.
So for me, it's the mindset of, you know, when you do these different jobs, you know, like I could be a production assistant, but also sometimes do like lighting, and like DP and director can teach me some stuff.
Yeah.
I could learn from that experience.
That's
or
right.
like if there's like I did like some wedding videos for like that same colleague,
Right.
and it was like a good rate. You know,
Yeah.
I did that to like pay my groceries, but also like learn the craft of editing and also coverage.
Right.
So for me, it's like I feel that you truly learn from every experience. So like for example,
For sure.
I did America's Got Talent a few months ago as
Oh yeah, that's funny.
yeah. So I was a contestant wrangler / production department staff, and I learned a lot about timing with actors, how to work with actors when they're kind of foreign.
right.
So it's all about these different jobs and skill sets that I've learned from every experience to my end goal. So for me, like I'm kind of like Taika Waititi. I do everything.
Yeah.
So he's a great director, writer, producer, actor. So for me, it's like there's so much I want to do, but
Right.
my end goal is ultimately directing. But I feel that there's so much jobs that you could be adaptable for to like make a living. Yeah.
You're totally right, and thank you so much for saying that because the audience might remember we also had Victoria here, and she was having kind of the same mindset because she even told me, and she always says that actually, that if I want to be a director and filmmaker, being on set, doing my own project, I want to know what my crew is doing and how they do it, and the best way of getting to know that is by doing it myself.
Yeah.
So that's how she started because she always wanted to know every position because if you're asking someone for something in this position, you want to know, is that something you can even ask that person? Is that something that this person could do? Is that person responsible
Yeah.
for it? And if you know because you did it yourself, you know how to answer and basically how
Totally.
to ask those questions, right? So I definitely appreciate that very much. So, and by the way, talking about this reality show that you just did, like that you just talked about a couple of months ago, how would you compare, let's say, the production? Obviously, it's different than fiction, but how would you compare the organization let's say, comparing it to that show and let's say The Doctor's Monster as a feature film. Just to get kind of an idea, even for the audience, I think it's very interesting to have someone here who works on who worked on the Americans Got Talent show, right? Which I think is a very interesting comparison at the end of the day. So how do you feel about that now?
I feel that for like high prolific projects like NBC, there's a lot more crew members.
Right.
So there's like so much things that you can do in like a few minutes. So for example, when I was a contestant wrangler, there was like the associate producer that communicated with me. So there was like a lot more fluidity and strong communication all the time.
Yeah.
And with like indie films, sometimes like there's so much that you can do with just so many different jobs that sometimes you have to do like a film slate. That's the second AC thing, but sometimes you have to do it just because there's so much money and budget you can do. So for me, it's like I said, like prolific like television shows. Like America's Got Talent is a much more, like a lot more people, bigger budget. There's more like hands that can do small tasks. But for like films or other stuff, sometimes you have to do so many different things.
For sure.
But for me, it all depends on the budget. Like I'm doing American Idol next week. So
oh really?
So that'll be like kind of like me like doing a lot of different things. I'm basically like a production assistant, but there's so many different production assistants that can do so many different things.
Right.
But for indie films, it's like you can only do one thing.
And that's so great that you just say that, because let's say production assistant. I think at A Doctor's Monster, I think you were a production assistant, right? But again, a couple of years back, so now you do different stuff, obviously. So I just wanted to ask you, what do you think is still kind of an undervalued role on set, to be honest? Do you think there's something where you feel like, hey, you know what? I think we should give those people more credits on set. They're definitely responsible for kind of so much, but people usually don't even see it as that. So what would you say is that position?
Well, definitely the production assistant employees.
Right.
So, like, for example, with The Doctor's Monster, I was sometimes doing the slate. I was, like, helping, like, the gaffer with, like, bringing the equipment. So, like, those employees are the ones that bring a lot of smoothness behind the scenes.
Oh, you did everything, by the way. I remember right now clearly in front of you. You did everything. I mean, it's just like this guy, honestly, if you haven't been on set, you've been in the car driving around doing this, and that, and then out of a sudden people are like, where's Ryan? I think Ryan is just picking something up right now. I said, really? I thought he was at the camera like 5 minutes ago. Seriously, that was crazy. You did everything, and I really appreciated that back then already. And I was like, wow. And now look at you, which is the best proof to me that if you basically work your ass off, excuse my French, you can get anywhere in this town. You just have to work hard and really just like get your head down and just get the work done, right?
Yeah, so for me, like in the moment, that project that we did, it was a lot. Like, for example, it was a 30-degree increase from San Francisco, where it's always foggy and cold, to LA. It was like, I was sweating, I was like dizzy all the time. That job was like the day after I moved, but I put my head down, I did like the work, I did as much as I can, and I got more connections from that. So for me, it's like production assistants are very undervalued, in my opinion.
And Ryan, you say so many great things already today, but also what you just said is so true to me. I think also at the end of the day, what people don't really see as much. So let's say people say, yeah, I can work as a production assistant, but I just don't want to do that every time. But then you just said something so wisely, honestly, the connection. At the end of the day, I'm always thinking like people, even if you believe that the production assistant position is so stressful right now and it's the kind of the low key position and you do everything, I'm always saying like you met so many great people on set, right? And I remember even after you worked on Doctor's Monster, you even got follow projects because of that. Because I remember Renee was so impressed by your work ethic that she gave you more projects after it. And because of that, you met different people on these projects and so on and so forth. So it's kind of for me, like a long chain of different positions, of different work ethics that you combine to create the bigger picture. And I think you do that brilliantly. And so would you agree that's basically exactly how people should think about that coming to this town?
Yeah, I think in my opinion, like Los Angeles is like the city of stars. Like it could be anyone. So for example, like I've run into so many people that like have like big egos when they arrive to LA. Like they were like a hot shot in like Idaho, like being director, like producer and all that. But when you're here, it's like
Right.
sometimes like you got to do the work that you don't want to do, and it's menial to get the work that you eventually want to do. So, for example,
Amen.
when I what's a good example? So, like when I did America's Got Talent, it was a lot of stuff sometimes when a PA was on the lunch break, but I got more connections from that. You know, so it's like a chain reaction. So even if you don't like doing some jobs, like you could still like have a good time connecting with people and all that. So
sure.
for me, it's like, you know, like for me, being a set PA is kind of like a day job when my like director or like actor or other higher jobs aren't happening. But
Yeah.
I don't mind it because I'm meeting people and learning behind the scenes of how first ADs work, producers, directors. So you don't have to like, you know, focus all the time on like getting the highest job. For me, it's all about sometimes when work is slow, you could just do like a PA job and like learn from other experiences and meet more people.
For sure, and I also believe that people appreciate that. Even even if you're basically on set and you say, you know what, I do it. Maybe that's not even part of my position here right now, but you know what, you need help right now. I'm gonna do it.
Yeah.
And I truly believe that people remember it. They definitely remember it. And the funny thing is, we even talked about that in a different episode. That say the production assistants of today might be the next executive in 10, 15 years.
Totally.
You never know. And I'm always talking to my actor friends, even in Europe or outside the country, who want to come to LA. And I'm always saying, guys, if you want to establish yourself and you want to create your own show reel, work on student films, work on short films, because you never know who you meet on set. Because the guy who's doing the short film right now might be the next big Hollywood director or filmmaker or whatever in 10, 15 years. And you definitely want to know those people.
Yeah.
So I'm always thinking that the kind of exception or perception, actually, I should say, a lot of people have, and I even had that myself when I got into the film industry the very first time. I was like, okay, that's my goal. I definitely give myself 2 years, and if I haven't met my goal, okay, I'm done, right? And then you realize, and then you meet reality. And I think that's very important. That's key to understand. As soon as you come into this town or you basically get into the industry, you cannot miss the reality. And you meet the reality and you realize, hey, just because you believe you can make it in 2 years or in 1 year or maybe next week, doesn't mean that that's reality. Because I think you're going to have like a wake-up call at some point and just realize, oh, okay, it's 5 years already? Okay. And I'm still on it, but I still love it. And I think that brings me to something I also wanted to ask you. How much you think it's important to really love the journey? Not just thinking about the end goal that you have in mind, obviously, every day that keeps you motivated, but also really enjoying the journey, really doing and being part of the industry. How much do you think is important to really have that in order to keep going?
In my experience, like obviously like when you're young, like when I graduated I was only 23.
Yeah.
And like, you know, sometimes when I was living in San Francisco, like the housing crisis and all that, it was tough in the moment.
Yeah.
But like I follow like Brendan Burchard, Tony Robbins, like personal development people. And those people talked about like sometimes you just gotta like embrace this, like it's called honor the struggle. Because like all the experiences and struggles that you've had will lead you to bigger and better things. So for example, there's a quote that says, no, not yet. So if I didn't get this huge Disney Plus job, I could get something else the next week. So for me, it's important to like, even if the journey could be hard sometimes, you got to embrace the journey because eventually as you get older, you will appreciate those experiences. So when I started LA for the first time, the first few months, obviously everyone has their own story with the hardships of living in LA for the first time or any big film industry city. But now I'm grateful for the tough experiences that I had because it led me to where I am now. So to answer your question, I think it is important to honor the journey.
And you're so right. I think like we have to struggle sometimes in order to appreciate what we achieved.
Yeah.
I think honestly, I'm struggling with that even myself sometimes to really like understand, okay, you should stop sometimes and just even look back.
Yeah.
I was never really a big fan of looking back. I was always trying, maybe that's my personality. I was always trying to look forward, looking to the next big thing, the next thing. But I really also learned for myself, since I'm in this town, to be honest, I even learned so much about myself. And one of the things is that sometimes you got to stop and reflect and look back and really see how far you come already. and what you achieved already. Because I really believe like in this kind of hustling mode that we're always in, right, in this town, which is a hustle, as we all know, right? That's the main word people always talk about, the hustle, right?
Yeah.
You kind of, I think, forget about that. You forget about to just even stop. Just reflect on yourself and just see what you've already accomplished and what you've done already and people you met already.
Yeah.
And all these kind of things. And I really have to remind myself almost every week, to be honest, that I should do that too, because it helps me to keep me moving and to stay positive too. Because that's also sometimes something that I talk to even a lot of actors actually, because you just said something like, if something is not working out for you, that you have to stay positive and just keep moving, right? And it's the same with auditions for actors, for myself, obviously. That's one of the main things, right? We get 100 no's and we always ask ourselves, okay, why? I felt like I was okay. Why is it a no again, right?
Yeah.
But then you just learn, hey, that's just part of the game. And you let go and you just move on. But that's easier than done, that's easier said than done. And I really kind of always remind myself, and I always wanted to ask you too, how do you do that? So let's say if you have a moment in life, or let's say whatever on a day, and you feel like, damn, I definitely wanted to have that project and now it didn't work out for me. How do you overcome those situations and kind of move on with life, still staying positive?
Ooh.
I know it's a deep question, but I think it's very important for the audience, because I'm always trying to make them understand, hey, it's great to be in this town, but it's not always working out for you, And how do you personally deal with such situations?
So a good example is when I mentioned that Disney Plus project. So it actually happened to me. So a few months ago, like when I woke up, I saw this job on Staff Meetup that said Disney Plus feature, and I love Disney Plus. Right. Like WandaVision is great. I love Loki and Mandalorian and all that.
Who doesn't?
Yeah, so for me, and that was like 3 months or so, and that's like, I'm saving up for a car next year.
Right.
So it's like, long story short, I didn't get it. There was like a ton of applicants. Like the hiring process was weird, like a lot of references and all that. So in the moment, I definitely felt a little defeated. But for me, it's like, in the moment, I just feel a little bit like crushed. But based on what I've learned from like Brendan Burchard, Tony Robbins, like my friends and colleagues, like for example, your book, I've slowly thought about the quote, "No, not yet." I forgot who told me that. And I also follow this Hollywood kind of success coach about mindset and like a good strategy mindset. Her name is Erica Warnick, and she talked about like honoring the struggle, kind of like the process of how you go through rejection. And also for me about my reflections of the past experiences where I got a no, or like a project got canceled, like a camera broke, and then like the next like shooting day or something. So for me, it's all about, there's always going to be something happening in the future, but I know it's in the moment, it's not ideal and it's tough, but there's always going to be something for me that could be good or better.
Right. That's awesome. I think that's positive thinking, by the way, guys. Hey, even if you're not in film or whatever, right? That's definitely for life. That's really a life advice. I really believe that, honestly, because life isn't always perfect, right? And I feel like the thing about the film industry, and a lot of people know about that, it's one of the most unpredictable industries, obviously, right? Yeah. But I think if you understand and accept it, I think acceptance is a big thing too, right? You got to accept certain things. I'm always a guy, honestly, still today, Ryan. I mean, you probably know that about me already, right? I'm always trying to control every situation. I'm always trying to feel like, hey, you know what? If I want to have it done like that, it's going to happen that way. And I'm always kind of believing and expecting the outer world to react to what I feel is right for me. But that's not how it works. Sometimes you got to accept that there is kind of an own dynamic out there, and you can't always influence exactly how you want it to influence. I think that's really something when you realize that and understand, hey, I have a goal, I have something that I want to do, but if the world or the environment that I live in is not working out for me right now, that's okay. I got to accept that now, because I cannot change it anyway. But if I'm basically trying to get myself down because of that, I'm working against myself. That's really something that helped me, because every time when I'm doubting like something because it didn't work out, I'm always thinking, if I doubt myself now, I put kind of a negative energy on myself. Yeah. And if I do that, I sense that out to people, and people sense the negative energy. And at the end of the day, what happens is you kind of work against yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest mistake, even I did, still do sometimes, that I'm always trying to also talk to people about in Europe or anywhere in the world, trying to basically make them understand, hey, it's not just your time yet. What you just said is a great quote, by the way. It's not just your time, but it will come eventually at some point. So just keep moving and stay positive.
Yeah.
Because it's so interesting. I'm not sure if you made that experience in LA too. Every time when I feel so positive and I just go out there and I just want to have something to happen and I stay positive, something positive comes my way.
Totally.
And that doesn't always mean that I basically get what I wanted, but something positive happens though. Would you agree on that? Isn't that interesting how the world and the dynamic of the world is working for you if you just stay positive?
Yeah, it's interesting. So like when I was like younger,
Yeah.
you know, like I think I was 21 or 22, like I had a big life milestone about sharing my mental health story, and like I got more opportunities with meeting entrepreneurs, like the entrepreneurial spirit, and I learned a lot about kind of energy vibration. So for example, if you're negative and like you're petty and like you kind of like, you know, self-sabotage with drugs and alcohol, that's going to be your life.
That's it.
So like when you create like the positive energy, when you exercise with the endorphins and you eat healthy food, like you surround yourself with good people, there's going to be good things coming to you.
Yeah.
You know, it's the universe is very weird. Like I believe in God and all that, but there's a big thing with like spiritual energy, like angels in a way too. So the spirituality and like how you feed yourself, your whole soul, it's going to create results in your life. So like obviously we all have our down days, you know, like there's a thing called like seasonal affective disorder, like during December and January when there's less sun, like for example in Alaska it has the highest rate of alcohol. So it's kind of like the sun, like how you do your life in your day goes into your results. So when you see like the positive people on Instagram, like, you know, those people like in the results, it's because of how they create their life in their inner world.
Right.
So it's like you are what you eat, you know, like who you surround. Like there's this quote that says, you are who, like something about the 5 people in your life that you hang out with the most is kind of like your results. Something like that. There's a quote about that. So for me, it's all about, like I remember when I graduated college, when I was about to graduate college, I changed my whole network. Not my whole network, but I changed a lot of my friends, like entrepreneurs, kind of like a healthy lifestyle, and a couple close friends of mine got me the fitness startup job. So for me, it's all about surrounding yourself with people and creating the high vibration to create the life that you want.
Thank you so much for saying that's so true. I mean, this is crazy what you just said, to be honest, because I even made the experience myself. I used to hang around people, you know, even like back in the UK, who basically didn't see what I believed in. They didn't see it, which is not a bad thing. It's just how they live life. But then you have certain people in life who even try to reflect what they feel about themselves and their lives on you.
Ooh.
Honestly, it's crazy how that happens. But then at some point, you
Same
just
here.
you kind of get caught up in this environment of those people, and you even start to believe what they tell you. You kind of even believe and see the same things as they want to see it. And you kind of forget about what your mission is and what you would like to accomplish in life. You don't even see it anymore, or you don't see it as a reality. And I truly believe that really hurts yourself, right? And when I realized that, I said, no, you know what? I understand that I basically, at the end of the day, we have to understand that we are also the product of our environment too.
Yes.
That's definitely what we are too, right? And I feel like if we surround ourselves with the wrong people, we're going to get the product out of that, which is not really seeing us anymore as who we are and what we are capable of.
Yeah.
And that really was a moment for me, kind of really like a mind-blowing experience when I realized I can't do this anymore. And honestly, Ryan, I had this moment when I woke up in the morning, really true, and I felt like I can't even get up anymore. I couldn't get up anymore because I didn't see the point of getting up right now living this life as I did, because I felt like that's wrong. That's not me. I can't do this anymore. And that was the point, but for me in life, when I felt like, okay, I just got to change everything now. I even have to leave the country. I even have to go somewhere else. Really, honestly. And I did, because I knew if I don't, that's it. This is gonna be it. I knew for a fact that if I'm not changing that right now when I felt it, then I will never gonna change it. You know those feelings when you have a moment when you feel like, okay, I know I have to act right now.
Yeah.
If I don't, that's it. I got it. I can't really postpone anything here right now. I gotta do this. So when was that for you? When did you have that?
So when you were talking the past couple of minutes, I
Yeah.
just had like reflection of my life the past few years. So for example,
wow.
in the San Francisco Bay Area, it's like the culture is very different, and I've always like loved like SoCal and Los Angeles my whole life ever since like, I've been like traveling here with my family. So for example, I got offered the Doctor's Monster job, I believe in late April or mid-April of 2018, and I had a different like creatives and like a network of people in LA. And when my dad found out that I was like in Los Angeles looking for like apartments and all that, he told my immediate side of the family. So basically my, you know, like my aunt, uncle, my other uncle, my grandmother, my grandfather, and all that. Yeah. So they're like the Bay Area culture, and especially the Korean culture, is kind of like a homebody lifestyle.
Okay.
And kind of like, you know, for example, my grandfather, when he was living at the time, you know, he's very traditional. Like all families members live together. You do like a steady kind of job. It's kind of like an Asian culture lifestyle.
Right.
So for me, it's like when they found out, a lot of them were skeptical. Like, I don't want to get too personal, but for example, my aunt, she's very petty in terms of kind of me living in Los Angeles, doing like America's Got Talent. Like when she found out I was doing America's Got Talent, like when I said that to my dad, she was like, "What?" and all that. So for me, it's like she like, I don't know why she gave up, or like when she stopped doing the painting and the art stuff. She was living in New York in her 20s with her boyfriend, which is now my uncle now. But it's like, I'm sure like this, like her negative thoughts, like how she sees the world, is like she brings that energy and just her upsetness with me, like when I moved to LA, and just her like kind of like skepticism. And I heard from my dad like a year or so ago when I was talking with my sister and dad at the time, she was like, "Oh, like Ryan's living in Los Angeles?" She was kind of like still skeptical. So it's kind of like who you are inside your world is how you're going to reflect it to some people, but you shouldn't reflect that on me.
That's right.
And also like when the week before I moved to Los Angeles, like my uncle, basically my aunt's husband, was also skeptical too. He's like, everyone makes mistakes in life, you know. Like you know, obviously I did some crazy stuff in college, you know, and everyone knows my mental health story and all that. But for me, it's like, you know, the people that you surround yourself with. So for example, a couple immediate sides of my dad's side, like my aunt, it's like whenever I'm with her, she's kind of like we still love each other, but and all that, but we're so different, you know. So like the Bay Area, it's like I can't be here anymore. So I remember right when I got offered the job for the Doctor's Monster, I was like, this is happening.
Right.
You know, I was like saving my money. Like I knew I was going to move to Los Angeles like 2019 or so, maybe 2020.
Yeah.
But like I found out that I was going to move earlier due to having more money, logistics and all that. So like I made it happen like a lot faster than I expected. And it was happening so quickly. Yeah. And I was like kind of bitter and resentful of San Francisco because, you know, back in the 80s and 90s, like with Full House and like the San Francisco culture was so like kind of more family oriented. And now the SF culture has changed like greatly because of tech companies and all that, and just
makes sense.
just the housing crisis and all that. So like I knew in the moment, like for a whole year and a half of when I graduated to when I was before I moved to LA, that I was like so like I can't do this anymore. Yeah. So right when I got offered a job, like that same week, I did like my last job with a New York production company, and then that I think the day after the job ended, I came here to like do apartment hunting. So right when I got offered the Doctor's Monster, was like, this is happening.
That's
and like,
awesome. Though.
Yeah.
That was the first project.
Yeah.
Really? So when we met, when did you come to LA at that point? When did you arrive in LA then?
So I moved May 31st of 2018. Everyone knows I always announce my 1 year anniversary. And then the next day I did the Doctor's Monster.
You kidding?
So it was pretty bananas.
Hilarious. So that means when we met, that was the second day for you pretty much in LA.
Yeah.
Wow, you never told me that.
Yeah, and like
that's crazy.
Yeah, so
that's
Renee
awesome.
Renee knew like like when she was hiring me for like a first AD job.
Yeah.
That I was like, it was like over 30-degree or 40-degree increase from San Francisco, cold, foggy to
Oh, it was hot.
to the riverside. So I was like,
It was hot.
I was like mentally like not there. I was like sweating. I was dizzy, and like just the transition of moving obviously is tough. You need like a good week or two to adjust. So I still wasn't like, my mind wasn't like fully clear, just to be honest, you know.
But
So
you did a
for
great
me-
job. I couldn't tell.
Thank you.
No, seriously. No, I remember we went to Riverside, right? Which a lot of people might know, which is more like into California, kind
Yeah.
of, right? Which is a little more Palm Springs area, almost, I feel like, which is super hot.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember when we've been on set, it was kind of a desert kind of feeling almost, like,
God.
right? I mean, it was super hot. It was like definitely in the hundreds, whatever.
I was not ready
Seriously.
for that. Yeah.
I wasn't even ready. I was already in LA for about a year or two. Right?
Yeah.
I wasn't even ready for it because Riverside is a different game.
Mm-hmm.
But honestly, I really appreciate and sharing your story. By the way, thank you so much for doing that because it's so interesting that you say that because I even realize, or kind of it reminds me of my life as well, because I'm always saying, like, you have people you love and people love you, but that doesn't always mean that everyone fully understands how you see your life.
Totally.
Which is
yeah.
fine, which is okay. But I think it's really about just respecting and accepting each other's lives. I think that's the most important thing, and I think we sometimes forget about that in the
Yeah.
world of, social media and everything. I think it's all about respect. Just because I believe my life should be like that doesn't mean that I think the same about your life. But I really also expect you to think the same way as I do to you,
Yeah.
And that's really something that I'm always trying to do. I'm always trying to treat people the way how I want to be treated, by
Totally,
them. I
yeah.
think that's very, very important to me. That's even what I learned in LA. But I also wanted to talk a little bit more about the film side of things too, obviously, but also coming to a mindset. We talked about mindset now a little bit more, even about life. But when it comes to working in film, right? And you just said that too, when it comes to the financial aspect, when you have to be financially stable, and you mentioned before when you came to LA, you kind of saved up some money to make sure that you are okay at the very beginning,
Yeah.
right? And we also talked about that in different episodes about the financial thing. So what would you say? What should someone do if you come to LA? What's very important? What are the key major things, the three major things, let's say, that someone have to keep in mind and have to be prepared for when they come to Los Angeles?
Okay, so several months before I moved to Los Angeles, so that woman, Erica Warnick, Hollywood Success Coach, she wrote a book called something about LA Bound, The Guide to Moving LA or something, and I bought like an ebook of it. So it has like a lot of steps, and there's always articles online, but a lot of the key things on that is have a good like emergency fund, kind of like 3 to 5 months or so of like savings of like living expenses, because like you have to do your security deposit or like groceries. Like what if work is slow because you just moved? Like if you don't have like a salary like $50,000 a year job for this big production company, if you do freelance like what I did, I had like a cushion for like an emergency, and then obviously you need to have like sort of like a network of people that So I knew a few people in the like when it was happening, and I also had 2 college bros that from San Francisco State that live in Los Angeles. So I had that, and then third I would say is the mindset, because like when you move to Los Angeles, like it's a totally different life. Like for example, my cousins. So basically, the aunt that I mentioned, her son, basically my first cousin, his cousins basically moved to Los Angeles around the same time as me, aspiring to be graphic designer and kind of a writer. And they didn't really, like they grew up in Livermore and they're great people, but they didn't have like the entrepreneurial, like the strong mentality mindset. Because when you're in LA, it's like, it's a lifestyle. You gotta like grind all the time. So I definitely recommend like having a strong entrepreneurial mindset and like always keeping strong despite, the challenges and like moving, because like you're going to be lonely a lot sometimes, because like this huge city, like when I was in San Francisco, it was like a 9-mile bubble. So yeah, I definitely recommend the good emergency fund. What was the third thing is like
Connections.
Connections.
Right.
and then also the mindset. Yeah.
No, I really appreciate it. You said something so true. I mean, by the way, I also wanted to talk about that for a second because a lot of people, what you just said, those three things are very important, right? But I think even a lot of people just ask themselves, okay, so let's say I have the money, right? I have 5, 6 months saved up, so I'm okay. I can rent an apartment or even apartment would be great, but sometimes it's just a room at the very beginning, as we know, right? But then let's say I also have the mindset, right? But let's say I just don't have any connections whatsoever. So let's say I don't know anybody in this town, right? I feel like a lot of people struggle with that. Okay, what am I going to do? How am I going to get the start? How do I start? Who do I connect with and how do I do it? So what would you say right now you do to get to new projects? How do you kind of connect yourself with new people that you don't even know maybe? So I think a lot of people want to know, okay, I come to LA, I got the money, I got the mindset. Okay, now let's go. I want to work on my first project. What am I going to do? How would you guide people at the very beginning? What would you tell them?
So based on like my experience and also a lot of my other colleagues and people that I've worked with, they told me their stories quickly sometimes.
Yeah.
So, like there's like stage32.com is great. It's kind of like a LinkedIn for creatives.
That's right.
You can meet like Stage 32 meetup. There's also like, there's different job websites. For example, like Staff Me Up, Craigslist. There's others like Facebook group posts, and like sometimes they like have like good rates for jobs. So even like for example Craigslist, you don't know like what type of email it is, but sometimes it could be a big job. So for example,
For sure.
I applied to be like an AD or first AD for like an indie film, and I had no idea what it was. And the first film, so this one I did was a sequel. The first one was an indie hit, and I didn't know that until I met the producer, director, actress / writer from the first one. And it was like, and the second one is huge, so now I have that connection. And that was just from a freaking Craigslist post.
That's crazy to me.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people would never expect something like that to like finding on Craigslist. So that's awesome. So you just found how was that for you? You found like a random post with like a feature film post talking about the position you wanted to
if you
apply
look
to?
on Los Angeles Craigslist, gigs, crew section,
Right.
there's like all these job posts. Like I got an AD job today from it. And
nice.
So basically, I forgot what the post said, but it talked about like an AD or PA for this indie film. And I believe I applied for the PA thing, but I talked about a first AD job I did a couple months ago, and I did really good at it.
Yeah.
And then she offered me the first AD job like out of the whim.
Nice.
And like we just had this like meeting at Starbucks in like the West Hollywood area.
But and honestly, you got to tell everybody, this is the best confirmation ever, right? I mean, honestly, if you did a great job and out of a sudden the same person comes around and said, hey, you know what? We're going to work on that. I liked your attitude. Please, we want you to have.
Totally.
That's the best confirmation you can get, right? I mean, that's crazy. So, and also, you said something so right, and we always talk about that, and I'm always saying that every time. I mean, even if you are a creative person in this town, right, and you want to work in film, and you have this creative thing within you that wants to come out, you cannot, I'm always saying, you cannot forget your business head. You have to also have your own business head on, because at the end of the day, you're kind of running your own company within yourself. You are the company. You are the product pretty much. So what would you say, and how do you go about that? Because some people are just not naturally born, let's say, business people or salespeople, because at the end of the day, that's what I do almost every day, right? As an actor, you got to sell yourself. You got to be like the salesperson for yourself. So what would you say? Is there anything that you basically feel like, hey, that's really what I learned about myself when I came to LA? I didn't have that, but now I have it because I know I need it in this town. If I don't have that, I'm going to lose out, and I cannot have that happen to me. What would you say is that? Is that also like to have even the business mind even more so?
In my experience, before I moved to Los Angeles, I was following like Tony Robbins, Brendon Burchard, and reading those books. But when I moved to LA, it's like a totally different culture and lifestyle.
Yeah, right.
So like when I visited for fun when I was younger and all that, like I was just going there for fun. But as a resident of Los Angeles, it was like a total curveball. So for me, when I went through like the no's and like the rejections and projects getting canceled, especially when March 2020 happened, it's all about for me, entertainment industry is a lifestyle. It's not a job. It depends what projects though, but ultimately, like who you are is your business. It's like, you got to do like the Spotify interview podcast. You got to like go to these networking events. So for me, it's all about managing time and scheduling yourself to have like your downtime. Like for example, I love watching like TV shows on my downtime and other stuff too. But you also got to find like schedule. You got to schedule also, your networking time, like applying for jobs, and like it's all about just managing and making sure that you're sane, but also like creating a life and lifestyle that you're comfortable with, but also like working hard at the same time. So for example, with like meetup events or like film Facebook groups, like you could find people there like from job postings or just going to like some random like hiking meetup, and you can meet a creative there.
Right.
So for example, I did this hiking meetup a year or two ago, and then the leader, the host, her husband like directed the Saw movies and like was a big editor. Wow. So it's kind of like you have to do it consistently in networking and all that, and have the mindset, but also schedule downtime at the same time.
Totally. That's so true that you say that. And that's even something that I learned for myself, because when I came to LA, and I'm always saying that, I was so focused on, okay, I got this dream, I got this goal, I got to do this now, right? Yeah. And you just basically focus 150% all of your time in your life that you have, all those 24 hours, pretty much like towards that one goal. And then at some point you just wake up, as I did, and you just realize, oh my goodness, there's also like a life I have. Beside the industry, right?
Yeah.
Outside of the entertainment industry. And I think that's so valuable to really take on and realize and really respect that. I think that's really something that where you can get even new energy out of. Because sometimes, I don't know how you feel about it, but sometimes I have to take myself out of the entertainment industry and have to do something completely different, because I would go nuts if I don't. Seriously, right? It's kind of this kind of, you're running around like a circle almost, like doing the same thing, because okay, this is how you have to do it in order to move on with your career. But then at some point you just feel like, okay, I got to get out of this wheel. I got to do something else. Maybe if it's just for a day, going down to the beach, that's what I usually do, like going for a run and just have some off time and just really trying to recollect myself and then just go back into it. That really helps me a lot. It's crazy. You kind of get kind of a different perspective on it too, because you know how it is. Sometimes if you do certain things too often and too much, you kind of lose yourself and you can't really see it anymore as for what it is. I'm not sure if you ever experienced something like that. You just get caught up in so much stuff that's always around you, and the city kind of tends to have you always under control, that you kind of have to stop sometimes and just feel like, no.
Yeah.
You got to get out of here. That's just for a day. Just give me 24 hours and I'm going to be back, So, and that's really also something I always want to talk about that too, which is something that you mentioned already. And you said, okay, the business mind obviously is something that you have to have. But also from another perspective, talking about the opposite thing. So when do you say no to a project? So let's say someone is approaching you, Ryan, and says, you know what, Ryan, hey, we worked on this project a year ago, and I really liked how you worked, and now we're working on this project, blah, 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 and we would love to have you on that as blah, blah, blah. And you read it. Let's say you have a post, and they sent you some information, even the payment, whatever it is, and you read all that. But then you just get the feeling, I can't do it. I just can't do it. Well, when is that for you, and why is that?
So a good experience that I had a few months ago was... So when I mentioned that good colleague that taught me about lighting when I was sometimes doing like a PA job, and when I edited those wedding videos, him and I did this music video shoot, and the next, I think 2 days later, or it was 2 days later, I thought it was going to be the same musician that we worked with that day, but it turned out that it was a previous client that worked well with us the summer before, and that client musician is close friends with my colleague that I worked with, but he did something really sketchy with not communicating with me about a job that I was supposed to do. So for me, it's all about communication and making sure that things are in the same wavelength with hiring. That's one big thing.
For sure.
So when that happened, and when my colleague, I won't say his name, when he said, oh, it's this shoot with this name / that client, I said, I told him basically what went down, and he respected me. And since we communicated about that, we were okay with me not doing the project. I also am very big with payroll process and like how you receive payment, because like money should be used as a tool to fuel your dreams and like live life. So if payment processes and the payroll process of receiving your payment is vague and sketchy and kind of like not smooth, like that's another red flag. Like if there's no like, you know, like deal memos or like contracts, that's a little red flag. But if it's like the small shoots, it's fine if it's like Venmo or something.
Yeah.
And also for me, it's all about what's the vibe of the director, what's like the cast and crew, like number. Another big thing like during this health crisis is the health and safety protocols. So I'm currently like I believe I'm going to do a behind the scenes photography, videography for a music video shoot next Tuesday, and I'm still finding out about the PPE and like the COVID testing stuff.
Yeah.
So for me, it's all about all those things, because like if there's something that's not like good and off, I'm not going to do it. So for that client that I turned down because he was just disrespectful, because I understand that different people communicate in different ways, but the way I work and the way I live was not how I like that experience.
Yeah, I mean, it's always about the feeling that you get too, right? That means even if someone is communicating differently and it's not just maybe just responding in the next hour or so, that's okay. But I feel like you always get a certain vibe with anything people do, you know? And sometimes I personally even believe, like, even if you get the right answer back, if the vibe is just not there, if you don't feel it with the person or with the overall environment, you just don't do it, right? Because I feel like at the end of the day, you just can't sell your soul for something just because you believe now you have to do every project in order to further your career.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of counterproductive. You know, you're basically working against yourself. But that's also very interesting. And also for the audience, you know, if people now interested in maybe getting, let's say, the first job as a production assistant, right? So let's say they work as a PA on set and they get this new opportunity. What would you say, what would you advise them on? Okay, these are very important things to keep in mind as a production assistant, let's say. If you want to do a good job, you have to do exactly this, this, and that. What would you say to them?
I would say don't do something that's not in your department. Listen, don't do. So it might be a weird quote, but it's kind of like only listen and do things when you're told. So like don't touch the camera department stuff. Like if someone asks you to do something, like listen to like the first AD producer, like the higher people, then do it. So don't do something that's not in your job position, you know? And also always like make sure and be like aware of what's going on, because you might need to do something soon. So like let's say like we're about to like wrap the whole day, you should like, you know, start wrapping, crafting and all that. So it's always being aware of what's going on and listening, you know, don't doing. Because if you like just randomly touch like a DIT location, I had experience with a line producer accidentally touching parts of a DIT, and 5 or 6 shots like got shut down, and we had to do like those scenes again. I won't say the name. It's an indie film and it's a prolific actor, but like the camera people were mad. I remember having dinner with them.
So you lost the takes pretty much. You lost the
footage. So basically what happened, we were doing this indie horror film. And it was in like some studio in Anaheim, and what happened was like the DIT, the video files were loading, and then the line producer was trying to move some stuff or organize. I forgot what he was doing, and then I saw him like freak out and flinch a bit, and then he talked to the producer about what happened, and then basically 5 or 6 shots of like 1 or 2 scenes like is gone, and then we had to do the whole thing again. And I remember like the DP, like when he heard that, he just like froze. And I remember when I had lunch with a few colleagues from that shoot, like before the last shooting day, they were like talking bad about what happened. So like I won't say the name, but it's just you don't touch stuff that's not your department.
Right.
You know?
I mean, that's kind of the worst situation ever. I mean, think about that. That's oh my goodness. I feel like I mean, sometimes some kind of technical issue comes up, right? Where basically you have the SD card and out of a sudden it's not working anymore, which is out of everyone's hand, that no one can control that, right? But something like that, that's bad.
Yeah.
That's really, really bad. I mean, and it's awesome that you also say that for the audience if someone is interested in becoming a production assistant, because I also think that a lot of people still maybe had the perception, hey, if I'm going to be a production assistant, I do as much as I can for everybody because then I can show how good I am in everything I do.
Yeah.
Right? I think that's exactly the opposite of what you should do, as you just said, which is very interesting to me because I feel like too much is not always better, right? I think sometimes it's just, as you say, just do what you were supposed to do, what people tell you, listen to it, and then react to it, right? And just don't do stuff just because you now have to prove yourself.
Yeah.
That's very awesome that you said that.
Yeah,
honestly.
like in my experience,
that's awesome.
Like
Interesting.
if I have to do like a task or something is like slowing down, I'm not gonna like do the task that needs to happen in a different department because for example, what if like there's a battery change that needs to happen with an RE Alexa Mini? Yeah. And then I do it, and then the whole camera battery location just breaks down. Yeah. And that's gonna be my fault, you know? Right. So it's all about like communicating and like making sure that, you know, just do your department because like if good example is I did an AD job for a music video shoot a few months ago for this indie kind of folk band, and the makeup artist was helping out a bit with our department and moving it, and I believe one of the lamp fell and broke, you know? So it's like, don't have different people doing so many different things. Like, I've mentioned this in like posts before, so I worked on the Dead Files. I don't mind saying this name because a lot of people say it's not the greatest shoot sometimes, so like... The field producer sometimes was like doing art department, right? And I was a grip, gaffer, stunt driver, stand-in, and PA. So like what? Yeah. So a lot of people know about this, and like I don't mind saying it out loud because it was crazy because like I have done like the grip and gaffer stuff, but they wanted me to be a stunt driver, and I did like this stunt driving scenes for the Mustang for the host of the show. So like the host is great, but it's like they wanted me to do so many different things.
The stunt driver, wow, just like that?
Yeah, so she was like, wow. So the production coordinator said, I need you to do that, and like the DP said, are you something like, do you take orders for? Are you comfortable doing it? And I just, in the moment, I just said, yeah, I'll do it because it's just a job to make things run smoothly. Because
I get it.
The other PA was like doing other stuff. Yeah. So like, I just did the task because it's just the job I wanted to do well. That's just how I roll.
I understand. I mean, that put you on the spot too, right? I mean, come on, what do you say? You say no? The car is here, hello? I mean, who else does that?
Yeah,
right?
When I was doing like grip and gaffer stuff, like the DP was asking us to like move equipment out of the backyard, but I was doing so many different things and it was really hot. I was getting dizzy, and I was like, I'm doing so many different tasks, like it's hard for me to do it like right away. Yeah. And like the media manager was mad and like did it herself because I was slow. Then she talked to the production coordinator about me, and I was like, it was a crazy situation. Right. Because for me, like, I know I did the best I could on that project, but I don't mind that they were sometimes mad because I know inside and the other PA knew that we were doing so many different things.
Right.
So,
I mean, thank you so much for saying that. I mean, at the end of the day, you know, you kind of like, you feel like I'm in between all those things, right? And now you're putting me on the spot and the car is here and you don't have anybody to drive. So, and you're asking me, I mean, what if I just would have said no now? What then, right? So, I mean, it almost feels like the situation you just described, there was actually no second option for you, you know? There was just the yes, obviously. Of course I do it, you know? There was no way out.
Yeah, in the moment I was like, why isn't there like a stunt driver?
Exactly.
And I was like, but it was like it was one of those shoots that's like less crew, so sometimes you have to do multiple different things, but it's like,
wow.
5 different job positions, and like it was to the point that I have 5 IMDb credits from that one episode. Wow. So it was something else.
But hey, you made it. You're still here. I appreciate that. But I also wanted to ask you because obviously you definitely want to also do more filmmaking. You want to do your own projects. You want to direct. And so what is your situation right now? What is your process right now? So do you also write yourself? Are you working on your own project already right now as we speak? Is there anything you can already talk about?
So currently right now, I'm not directing or like creating my own personal projects. So when I first moved to LA, I did like some directing, like I did some music video, like videography directing, and like I did DP, directing, editing for a couple music videos, 2018 and last year. Right. But for me, it's like a challenge because, you know, especially with this health crisis, you know, like any job is like a job, and just you know, no job is below you. So like sometimes I have to like do like this like NBC TV show like America's Got Talent just to like pay for my car, you know. So like as of right now, I have like a couple projects in mind, but it's just the finances and getting a production company and pitching it to someone to make it happen. But I also, you know, like I'm doing American Idol next week, and that's going to be like 12 hours a day or so, you know. So for me, it's like finding the time and energy to make my own personal project, to like get a better directing reel and find representation and all that, but also like making a living and like surviving, you know, because I don't want to like run on $100 in my bank account, you know, and like just to direct my own projects, you know.
But honestly, I have no doubts. I feel like you have the right mindset, the right attitude, that you're going to make it happen at some point eventually, right? I think, and you're totally right. Sometimes just life comes in the way, and just life is there, and you have to pay the bills at the end of the day. And we always talk about it. It sounds very simple, but at the end of the day, if you want to have a roof over your head and you want to have food on the table, you need money. It's how simple as that, right? You need money. And if there's a project right now, especially because of the crisis, and you need money because there's not a lot of maybe stuff that was happening over the last 1.5 years, right? Which is how it was for everybody. So you just got to make sure that you earn enough money to just keep moving, right? That's just kind of a part of the process. So I totally understand. And by the way, I know we're running out of time. Oh my goodness, we're talking for so long already. I can't believe it. But I also I don't want to spoil anything, but I can't forget what you mentioned to me last night that it left you speechless. You watched the James Bond movie, No Time to Die, guys, right? It's definitely no time to die for us today. But just describe it for me a little bit. I mean, you know, I know you're very good at describing things without even like spoiling or like talking about something in the movie. But when you watched the movie last night, and the new James Bond movie, and I know a couple of people I know already watched it and have the same kind of feeling as you do, the first moment you sat down and the movie started and you watched the first couple of minutes, how did you feel about that? Even comparing it to all the other James Bond movies, because remind me, you watched all the movies, you know all the James Bond movies, right? How would you specifically compare this one, which is also the last one of Daniel Craig, obviously, to all the other ones? If you can explain that.
Yeah, like I said when the podcast started, so Casino Royale was the first feature film that I saw by myself. And I was 12 years old. That was the first time that I was starting to buy DVDs and like getting into like the film kind of movie business. So I think for me, this 5-movie franchise has been a huge part of my entertainment watching life. So like I did like not see a lot of the Bond movies before this. I did like a marathon for the past year of a lot of the Connerys, Roger Moore, Timothy Dalton, and other stuff. I've seen all the Pierce Brosnan movies, a couple of them last year. So, but the Craig movies have been like a huge part of like my middle school, high school, college. So I felt this film also due to the delay of, it was first supposed to come out April 2020.
That's right.
Yeah, so that was like the first time I was like, oh, this is real life. And like for me, it was just heartbreaking for the release date delays for this. But this is also like a 5-movie like franchise technically, because this whole 5 movies is a whole like story. So when I was watching it, and especially the first couple minutes, but especially the last 5 or so minutes, I'm not going to spoil anything, but to me, I felt that, and also the action climax, when I was experiencing it, and I also saw it at AMC Universal City Walk, the biggest IMAX in LA. Right. Like to me, like this didn't feel like just like a movie. It felt like a pop culture event. So when I was watching it with all these people, I felt like I'm experiencing like an event of like pop culture and media, because like Daniel, you know, like obviously Bond is like a huge iconic, you know, novel and also a franchise ever since like I think the early 60s or 50s.
Yep, that's all right.
So for me, it's like some moments I was like, I'm experiencing something special. And also I saw it in this huge IMAX theater and all that. So for me, I definitely felt the emotion of like, this is truly an experience that, you know, I'm never going to forget.
Yeah.
And then like the last 5 minutes is just,
Woo! Really?
yeah.
Oh, man.
Well, technically it's like, you know, it's Daniel Craig's like final movie as James Bond.
Right.
You know, and like it was very profound.
And by the way, I mean, it's always hard to say because every actor brings something else to the table, right?
Yeah.
But I have to ask you now, because you just told me you watched all the James Bond movies. That means you also know all the James Bonds. You basically saw them in action in every movie. Who's your favorite?
Daniel Craig.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't expect you to say that. That's
Well, I feel that Craig like brought a more, also because of the producers and what their visions were and how the directors direct actors.
Interesting.
But I feel that these Craig movies was a more psychological, human, and more gritty, natural portrayal of like a man. You know, even if he was like a 007 agent, it was a more human and side of who he was.
Interesting.
And just his like, you know, final performance as Bond to me felt like this. I felt like Daniel Craig was like, this is truly who I am. I am James Bond. And then Sean Connery is like second. I thought he was like a more charismatic, but also a good action hero.
Yeah.
But Daniel Craig, for me, was like the best. Also because I have bias because it was the first movie I saw by myself, Casino Royale.
So that's interesting that you say that. I mean, we have to finish up, but this one last thing, which is very interesting to me. So that means for you personally, you even see the evolvement of this person who was the agent, you know, always for a lot of people, now becoming this human being, almost like we can even more identify with him now as a person rather than just seeing him as an agent. That's so interesting. And you feel like that Daniel Craig basically in the last one really captured this feeling for you, to be like, okay, I can see him now as the person James Bond and not just the agent.
Yeah, and also it was like probably 13 or so years from like Casino Royale shooting to No Time to Die shooting. So like he had a long time of like the movies and like taking breaks in between. So, but like definitely like the whole film, especially with his final scene, felt like, you know, I've embodied, you know, James Bond, you know.
Okay, I gotta watch it now, guys. There's no way out. I
Check it
definitely
out.
have to watch it. That's awesome. Thank you so much. Before we end though, where can people find you actually?
Yeah, so I have a website. It's Ryan, RYAN -Cho, CHO.com. So Ryan-Cho.com. It has a description of who I am on the top. It has like my director reel, projects I've done as AD, like other positions, and basically on the bottom it shows my phone number, my email, and my social media links. So Ryan-Cho.com.
Awesome. So now everyone can call him. Perfect. I love
call
that.
me. I need a job.
I love it. Thank you so much, Ryan, for coming out today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I really appreciate it. And also for your insights. Honestly, that's really valuable, because I feel like guys at home, right? I mean, if you want to become a production assistant and you want to come to LA, I think these are very in and outs, and what you can do, what you should do, and also what you should not do, right? To really pay attention on all those things. So thank you so much, guys, for watching today. Wherever you are, right? I know we have people watching from Europe, obviously, from Australia too, from South Africa, even in South America. I really appreciate you guys. If you want to follow me, you can do that on Instagram. It's at Benjamin Schnau, SCHNLU. Same on Facebook, same on YouTube. And please, if you watch us on YouTube, please leave a thumbs up and also subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much, guys, and see you next time.